Today on the bench is a Zenith pocket watch with a special feature. At first sight, the pocket watch is pretty nice looking. A very classical look. Art Deco font for the hours and nicely stylized blued hands. A first issue that jumps to the eyes is the misaligned hands. We can immediately see that the second hand, in particular, is off-center. This is an easy fix, and I will settle that issue later on. As I open the case, here comes the special trait of this watch. The movement uses sapphires instead of the classical rubies. However, the watch is barely ticking. After a couple of minutes, it simply stops. It might very well be an issue with the mainspring. Let's open up the case. I use a simple knife for this task. And there it is. By the way, if you like this kind of watch service and repair videos, please consider following the channel. More of these are planned. Here we can see that the case is made of platinine. It is a type of alloy that resembles platinum in appearance, but is not composed of platinum. It typically contains a mix of metals such as nickel, copper, and zinc, and sometimes small amounts of other metals to enhance specific properties. The name platinine comes from its platinum-like color and sheen. Another very common trait of pocket watches of that era are the typical blued hands that I am currently removing. These hands are in reality tempered using fire. When the hands reach a certain temperature, they become less brittle and more ductile, while giving a marvelous deep blue. Here is the dial. It is an enamel dial. The back of it has that characteristic enamel finish where we can see some burnt area. Enameling is an ancient art, with roots tracing back to Egypt and China. In watchmaking, enameling has been gaining popularity since the 18th century and quickly became one of the most prized decorative techniques. Watchmakers value enamel for its brilliant colors, exceptional durability, and resistance to fading over time. The production of enamel dials is an intricate and time-consuming craft that requires exceptional skill, precision, and patience. Each step must be executed with care to achieve the desired finish, and even a small mistake can result in the need to restart the entire process. There are multiple enameling techniques. One of the most well-known is the grand feu, literally translating to great fire. Grand feu enamel is produced by applying powdered enamel to a metal surface and firing it at high temperatures. A light mist of alcohol is vaporized over them to prevent the fine powder from being disturbed by air pressure while being carried from the dusting table to the oven. This process requires precise temperature control, otherwise the enamel may bubble, crack, or change color. As the dials go into the oven, set to no less than 700 degrees Celsius, the alcohol instantly ignites. They stay in there for just a couple of minutes before coming out, and this process is repeated a couple of times, depending on how thick the enamel needs to be. Each time, a fresh layer of powder is added. The intense heat melts the enamel, bonding it to the disc below as it liquefies and then hardens again. Watches this age often suffer wear around the mainspring barrel hole, causing excess play and affecting the potential of the amplitude. Under magnification, the barrel arbor shows some play. This will be fixed later with a staking set. With the serial number, an approximate year for the movement can be found. Here, we can see that the serial number is in the 2.6 millions. With a table, it makes this watch from 1925. This pocket watch is nearly 100 years old. Nowadays, Zenith is a brand known for its legendary El Primero chronograph and variations. The company was started in 1865 and is one of the oldest continuously operating watchmakers. At the 1900 Paris World Fair, the founder of the company was awarded the Grand Prix for their Zenith movement. This is a slight variation to this particular movement that we have here. The original awarded movement had a simpler brass finish and a different timing regulator. Now, fast forward to 1969. Zenith introduced what would become its most legendary creation, the El Primero. This was the world's first automatic chronograph movement capable of measuring time to a tenth of a second, thanks to its high-frequency 36,000 vibrations per hour. During the quartz crisis of the 1970s, while many traditional watchmakers struggled or disappeared, Zenith managed to endure. A watchmaker named Charles Vermeau even took it upon himself to hide the tools and machinery needed for the El Primero movement, preserving its legacy for future generations. Let's shift our focus back to the disassembly. We can see that the barrel is quite dirty around its arbor. On the plate as well, the barrel hole has the same old dried up grease. The backside is almost done. We can see some nice perlage under the gear train. Perlage, or circular graining, is a type of finishing in watchmaking. Each swirl is crafted individually using a spinning abrasive tool, requiring precision, patience, and a steady hand. Beyond its aesthetic appeal, perlage serves a functional purpose. The textured surface can trap tiny particles, reducing the risk of them interfering with the movement's functionality. The parts that have just been disassembled fall under what's referred as the keyless work. The term dates back to an era when pocket watches were wound with a key, which was also used to set the time. After the 1800s, watchmakers invented a mechanism that allowed a single crown to handle both winding and time setting. After having the movement disassembled, let's start the pre-cleaning by using some pegwood to remove the bulk of the filth. Unlike metal tools, pegwood is gentle on delicate surfaces, ensuring that no scratches or abrasions mar the finely polished gears, pivots, or jewels. This type of wood can easily be shaped and isn't brittle while being flexible. When inspecting the different parts, I came across a bad surprise. The center wheel sapphire shows some cracks. This is a bummer, considering that these are not available anywhere as far as I have searched. We'll put that aside for now, and continue the work. Let's address the play issue of the barrel arbor. For this, I am going to use a staking tool with 2 rounded punches. I am gently tapping the punch while turning the bridge to apply an even pressure. Here's a side view animation showing the process. The bridge, highlighted in yellow, is positioned between the 2 red punches. The matter of the bridge is slowly pushed in using a punch, creating a smaller hole. Then comes the smoothing broach. This will flatten the ends. This is why the hole was made smaller earlier on. Here is the result. The play that was significant before is now gone. Let's open up the mainspring barrel. The arbor has come out with the lid, which isn't how it's supposed to be. This is likely the reason behind the watch's poor performance. The old grease has dried out so much that it's prevented the arbor, and consequently the spring attached to it, from moving freely. This pocket watch was made before the era of shock-protected balance staffs. Instead of a spring mechanism, the jewel is secured with simple screws. This means I'll need to completely disassemble the balance. First, I'll unscrew the tiny screw holding the balance spring to the cock. Here we go. Slight tap on the end of the spring to move it out of the way. Then it's time for the regulator index and the jewel unit to be disassembled. Let's not forget the escape wheel capstone. Now that everything has been taken apart, it's time for cleaning. Let's move on to the next step. A new mainspring is going to be installed. It has a special T-end shape, so I place a tiny piece of Rodico on the outside to have a visual mark. The mainspring I found is a bit on the shorter side. I couldn't find any better candidate this time. A mainspring is characterized by 4 measures: a height, a thickness, a length, and a diameter. Depending on availability, a perfect candidate for a watch this old isn't always obtainable. It's time for the gear train to get back on the main plate. The gear train in a watch is a series of interconnected gears that transfer energy from the mainspring to the escapement. Starting with the mainspring barrel, the energy flows through the center wheel, third wheel, fourth wheel, and finally the escape wheel. Now, onto the escape wheel cap jewel. I put a tiny drop of low viscosity oil. Right there, you can see it in the center. Let's take care of the center wheel jewel now. After more inspection, the cracks are only in the core of the sapphire. The contact surfaces with the pinions wheel are not affected. I decided to reinforce the structure by applying a coat of epoxy resin. This is the best option I found since a replacement sapphire is not available. In watchmaking, jewels are small, synthetic gemstones used as bearings in the movement of a watch. These jewels reduce friction and wear on metal components, such as gears and pivots, by creating a hard, smooth, and stable surface for these parts to rotate against. Traditionally, rubies have been the gemstone of choice for watch jewels because they are incredibly hard, resistant to wear, and inexpensive to produce synthetically. Synthetic rubies, created through processes like flame fusion, are chemically identical to natural rubies, but are far more affordable and consistent in quality. These tiny gems are positioned in areas of high stress or friction, like the pivots of the balance wheel, escape wheel, and other key parts of the gear train. Over time, the use of synthetic jewels has allowed watchmakers to improve the durability and precision of their movements, reducing the need for lubrication and extending the lifespan of watches. While rubies dominate the watchmaking industry, sapphires are occasionally used as an alternative, particularly in high-end watches. Interestingly, rubies and sapphires are made of the same material, corundum, but differ in color due to trace elements. Rubies are red because of chromium, while sapphires can appear in various colors depending on other elements like iron or titanium. Beyond their visual appeal, sapphires are just as hard and durable as rubies, offering the same functional benefits in terms of reducing friction and wear. At the pinnacle of watchmaking, in the realm of very high-end horology, diamonds are occasionally used for jewels in the most exclusive timepieces. Diamonds, being the hardest natural substance, provide unparalleled resistance to wear, making them ideal for bearing high-stress components in a watch movement. However, their use is not solely functional. Diamonds are chosen for their exclusivity. Some brands use diamonds to showcase their technical mastery, placing them in highly visible parts of the movement, like the balance wheel. Here we can see that the only spot where there is a ruby instead of a sapphire is the bottom cap jewel for the balance pivot. As usual with balance stones, a light drop of 9010 oil is applied. Let's move on to the click spring. You'll notice that parts like this, along with others in the movement, like the screws, the click, and the escape wheel capstone holder, are finished with a beautiful black polish. Black polishing, also known as mirror polishing or specular polishing, is one of the finest decorative techniques in watchmaking. Its origins trace back to the 18th century, during the golden age of horology. Back then, black polishing was a hallmark of the master watchmaker's skill. It involved laborious hand-polishing techniques with fine abrasives on tin or zinc plates until the surface became perfectly smooth and reflective, appearing black at certain angles. This technique was primarily used on high-end timepieces for aesthetic and functional purposes. Polished surfaces reduce friction and resist tarnishing, making them ideal for components like screws, capstone holders, and levers. Today, while the principles remain the same, modern tools and machinery have eased some of the painstaking manual effort. Watchmakers now use specialized polishing jigs and high-precision abrasives to achieve the same mirror-like finish. However, black polishing is still highly labor-intensive and remains a mark of luxury and excellence in watchmaking. Its use is not just aesthetic but functional. It enhances durability and performance. Here is the moment of truth. Let's place the balance wheel back on the movement. The movement needs to be powered up by winding it. And that's it. It's ticking back to life. Let's check the numbers now. All looking great. No beat error, decent amplitude and rate. Let's address the dial issues now. First of all, the dial needs some pampering. We can see some yellowish cracks around 12 o'clock and some stains on the edge between 7 to 9 o'clock. Also, there is a tiny speck of debris just under the chronometer writing. Since this is an enamel dial, it can be cleaned with Polydent, a denture cleaner, which is intended to clean porcelain dentures. I simply put some water in a container, dropped in a tablet, and let the dial rest in it for a couple of hours. While the dial is getting cleaned, let's also clean the case components. Time to take the dial out the denture cleaner water. Let's quickly dry it out. Here is the result. It is much better. It has cleaned every bit of filth. Final issue to take care of is the misaligned hands, pinions. To fix that, I simply bend the dial feet in the proper way, whilst being careful not to break them. Here is the result. Final stretch now. The dial is back on the movement as well as the hands. We can almost see the end of today's work. I decided to put a brand new glass on the watch. I used this crystal press that bends the glass evenly so that I can fit the bezel onto it from under. I then release the pressure to allow the crystal to take its shape back and sit properly around the bezel lip. Here it is. The work is now completed, and this pocket watch is ready for the years, if not the century to come. Thank you for being with me through this video. I'll see you in the next one.